is a moment every year that most people completely miss. It does not announce itself. It does not send a warning. It simply passes. And the people who missed it spend the entire summer wondering why their garden never produced what they hoped for, why their shelves stayed empty, why they were still standing in the grocery store checkout line in August, paying prices that feel more like a monthly rent than a weekly food bill. That moment is March, and it is happening right now. What you plant or do not plant in the next few weeks will determine what you eat, what you preserve, and what you have stored before winter arrives again. That is not an exaggeration. That is simply how growing food works. The calendar does not negotiate. The soil does not wait. And the 9 plants I am going to walk you through today are not suggestions. They are your foundation. Before we go any further,
The soil
I want to
does
ask
not
you
wait.
something simple. If this kind of knowledge matters to you, real, practical, grounded information about feeding yourself and your family from the earth, then take a moment right now and subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button. It tells me you want more of this. And stay until the very end of this video, because the last plant on this list is the one most people overlook entirely, and it may be the most important one of all. Let us start with something honest.
I don't know how we'll manage if prices keep rising.
We are living through a strange
We just have
and
to make do,
uncomfortable
like
period in
always.
history.
It's our duty.
Food prices have climbed in ways that would have seemed impossible to most people just a few years ago. Supply chains that once felt invisible and reliable have cracked open to show just how fragile they really are. Eggs, olive oil, butter, fresh vegetables, things that were simply part of the background noise of daily life have become budget decisions. Conversations at kitchen tables that never used to happen are happening now. And there is a quiet but growing number of people who are responding to this, not with panic, but with something older and more grounded. They are turning back to the soil, not because it is trendy, not because it makes a good photograph for social media, but because somewhere deep in their instincts, they understand that the most reliable food security is the kind you grow yourself. Think about what your grandparents or great-grandparents knew that most of us have forgotten. They did not trust a single system to feed them. They kept a garden. They preserved what they grew. They planned their year around the seasons, not around
Completely
the
ready,
promotions in a supermarket flyer.
but they cannot plant
That
themselves.
knowledge was not primitive. It was sophisticated. It was earned.
The gap is
exactly
almost
the
never
kind of
knowledge.
thinking that is becoming
is
relevant
timing.
again, not as nostalgia,
The
but
clock
as
and
necessity.
the plant are in a relationship.
Now,
timing
here is
your
the
planting
thing
can make
about
all
March
the difference.
specifically. March sits at the intersection of two worlds. Winter has not fully let go. Spring has not fully arrived. And in that in-between space, a very specific set of biological timers begin to tick. Seeds that need weeks of indoor development before they can survive outside are counting on you to start them now. Roots that need cool soil to establish themselves are waiting for you to put them in the ground. Plants that will provide you with food from June through November, provided you act in March, are sitting in packets and bulbs and tubers, completely ready. But they cannot plant themselves. This is crucial. The gap between people who eat well from their own land and people who wish they could is almost never about knowledge of what to plant. It is almost always about timing. The best gardener in the world cannot rescue a tomato started in June that needed to go in the ground in May. The clock and the plant are in a relationship, and you are either part of that relationship or you are not. So let us get into the 9 plants. And as we go through each one, I want you to notice something. These are not random. They are not chosen for novelty or aesthetics. They are chosen because together they represent something close to a complete system, a layered, season-spanning, nutrient-diverse harvest that can genuinely
Peppers
change
need
your relationship
warmth to
with the grocery
germinate.
store, with your food
Start in
budget,
March.
and with your sense of security. The first plant is the tomato. I know, you have heard about tomatoes. Everyone grows tomatoes, or thinks about growing tomatoes, or has a neighbor who will not stop talking about their tomatoes. But I want you to set aside everything you think you know for a moment, because most people who plant tomatoes are doing it too late, and they are choosing the wrong varieties for the wrong reasons, and they are treating what is actually a deeply strategic crop as a casual hobby plant. Here is what the tomato really is. The tomato is summer in a bottle, or in a jar, or frozen in bags in your chest freezer. A single, well-established tomato plant of the right variety, and we will talk about varieties in a moment, can produce between 10 and 30 pounds of fruit over a season. 30 pounds from one plant. That is not a side dish. That is the foundation of a pantry. Tomatoes must be started indoors in March in most
Cut
climates.
the outer leaves.
They need 6
The
to
plant
8 weeks
keeps
of
growing.
indoor growth before they are ready to be transplanted outside after your last frost date. If you wait until April to start them, you are losing weeks of production time on the other end of the season. If you wait until May, you may get some tomatoes, but you will not get the volume you need for preserving. And preservation is the whole point. Think about it this way. A fresh tomato eaten in July is a pleasure. A jar of crushed tomatoes you canned
The crop
yourself,
that
opened
changed
in
the
January
course
to
of
make a
history.
soup, is something different entirely. It is physical proof that you planned ahead, that you invested effort in one season to feed yourself in another. That is the psychology of food security, and it starts with starting your tomatoes in March. For variety selection, think about purpose. If you want fresh eating, choose a reliable slicer, something like a brandy wine for flavor, or a early girl for speed. If you want
Preparation
quantity for
begins
sauce
in
and
March.
preserving, paste
Place your
tomatoes
seed
for your
potatoes in a
insert.
bright spot to
The
encourage
San
healthy
Marzano,
sprouting before
the
planting.
Amish paste, the Roma. These are dense, low-moisture tomatoes that cook down beautifully and fill jars efficiently. If you have space for only one tomato variety and your goal is long-term food security, plant a paste tomato. You will not regret it. The second plant, and this one surprises people, is the pepper. Peppers are chronically underestimated. They are treated as a garnish crop,
Beans
something
and
to
rice
throw into
have fed
salads,
billions
to toss
through
on a pizza,
history.
to buy one of at the grocery store when a recipe calls for it. But a gardener who understands peppers knows that they are one of the most valuable plants you can grow for a combination of nutrition, versatility, and preservation potential. Here is what most people never realize about peppers. They take even longer than tomatoes to get going from seed. Peppers need warmth to germinate, ideally around 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and they grow slowly in those early weeks. Starting them in March gives you a plant that is robust, well-rooted, and ready to hit the ground running when you transplant it in late May or June. Starting them in April gives you a scrawny seedling that spends the first half of summer just trying to catch up, is less than #0. 5 is greater than. Starting them later than that is, in practical terms, giving up half your season. Now, think about why peppers belong in a food security strategy. Bell peppers, sweet peppers of all colors are packed with vitamin C. More vitamin C per ounce than an orange. They freeze beautifully. Slice them, spread them on a baking sheet, freeze them solid, then transfer them to bags. They will sit in your freezer for a full year. Pulled out in December for a stir fry, a soup, an omelet, they are worth their weight in gold. And then there are the hot peppers. Cayenne peppers dried and ground become a spice that lasts indefinitely. Paprika peppers, dried and smoked, become something you can season an entire winter of meals with. Banana peppers, pickled in brine, become one of the easiest, most satisfying preservation projects a beginner can undertake. Peppers are not a luxury. Start them now. Let us talk about something that is perhaps the most underappreciated gift the March garden can offer. And that is the cool season green. Spinach, lettuce, kale, Swiss chard. These are the plants that laugh at the cold. While your tomato seedlings are sitting under grow lights on your kitchen
Before
counter,
refrigeration,
waiting for the world outside to warm
before
up,
canning,
spinach can go
this
directly
worked.
into the ground in March. Not inside under lights. Outside, in the ground, into soil that still has the memory of frost in it. This is a profound thing once you fully grasp it. Most people look at their bare March garden and see nothing. They see brown soil, bare beds, the aftermath of winter, and they wait. They wait for warmth, for spring to arrive in full, for the comfortable green softness of May. Meanwhile, a gardener who understands cool season crops is already eating from their garden. Fresh spinach in salads, baby kale leaves harvested young and tender, Swiss chard sautéed in olive oil with garlic. In March and April, when almost nothing else is growing, these plants are delivering. Spinach specifically deserves a moment of deep respect. It is fast. Some varieties produce harvestable leaves in as little
Parsley
as 30
dries
to 40
beautifully.
days from
A jar
planting.
represents
It
dozens
is
of
nutritionally
uses.
dense iron, folate, vitamin
Harvest
K,
heavily.
vitamin A, potassium.
Dry
It
it.
is easy. It asks almost
Collect
nothing
the
from you,
seeds.
except a relatively cool space and some water. And it is generous. Cut the outer leaves, and the plant keeps growing. Do this 3 or 4 times before the summer heat eventually causes it to bolt and go to seed, and you have pulled a remarkable amount of food from a small square of soil. Kale is what I think of as the backbone green. It is not as quick and delicate as spinach, but it is enduring. Kale started in March, will still be producing in November. Some varieties will survive light frosts and keep going. There is something deeply comforting about being able to walk into your garden in late October, when most other plants have long since finished, and cut a bowl of kale for dinner. It is also one of the most nutritionally dense foods that exists on Earth. Calorie for calorie, it delivers vitamins and minerals that would cost you considerably at any health food store. But you grew it, and it cost you almost nothing. Now we come to a plant that is almost mythological in the history of human survival, and that is the potato. People think of potatoes as simple, ordinary, the plain brown background note of the dinner plate. But I want you to consider what a potato actually represents in the larger story of human civilization. The potato, more than almost any other crop, changed the course of history. When it arrived in Europe from the Americas in the 16th century, it transformed the diets and the population growth of entire nations. The Irish built a civilization around it. When the blight came, the consequences were catastrophic, not because the potato was a weak strategy, but because monoculture always is. Grow more than one variety. That is the lesson of history and of common sense. What the potato offers in a home garden is extraordinary. Caloric density, storage potential, versatility, relative ease of cultivation. A single pound of seed potatoes planted in well-prepared soil can return 10 to 15 pounds of food by harvest time. That is not a metaphor. That is not approximate.
Anxiety
That is a
versus
real,
action.
reliable multiplication of caloric energy that you can hold in your hands in the fall. Seed potatoes go in the ground in March in many climates, particularly in zones where the last frost comes early or in regions where the soil warms quickly. In colder areas, you start them inside in containers, or you wait for the last frost to pass in April. But the preparation, ordering your seed potatoes, choosing your varieties, chitting them on a windowsill to encourage sprouting, all of that happens in March. This is the moment. And storage. Let us talk about storage for a moment, because this is where the potato becomes almost magical in a food security context. A potato, properly cured and stored in a cool, dark, dry environment, will last for months. Not days. Not weeks. Months. A root cellar, a cool garage, a basement corner, these are all you need. You can harvest potatoes in September and still be eating them in January, February, March again, as the next growing season begins. That is the circle.
A plant
That is
will
what food
exist
security
that did not
actually
exist
looks like
before,
when it is built properly.
because you put it there.
The fifth plant on this list is beans. And specifically, I want to talk about dry beans, though we will touch on green beans as well, because they deserve their own moment. Beans are the protein of the home garden. When people worry about eating from their own land, the first concern is almost always protein. How do I get enough protein without relying on meat? How do I build meals that are genuinely sustaining? Beans are a large part of the answer. They are a complete protein source when combined with a grain rice, cornbread, a simple flatbread made from your stored flour. Cultures all over the world have understood this for millennia. Beans and rice in 1,000 variations have fed billions of people through history, through famine, through war, through poverty. Not because they were the only option, but because they worked. Dry beans, navy beans, kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans, Jacob's cattle beans, dragon tongue beans. These are planted in late spring when the soil is warm, but the seed ordering, the variety selection, the bed preparation, all of that begins in March. And here is the key insight about dry beans that most beginning gardeners completely miss. You are not growing these to eat fresh. You are growing them to dry and store. You let the pods dry completely on the plant. You shell them on a cool autumn afternoon. You put them in glass jars on a shelf. And they will last there, edible and nutritious, for 3 to 5 years. Not months. Years. Imagine having 3 years of beans on your shelf. Grown by you. In your own
Are you a
soil.
beginner holding a
Shelved
seed
in
packet
your
and
own
wondering
pantry.
where to start?
The grocery store becomes something you visit for salt, for oil, for the few things you have not yet figured out how to grow or make yourself. Not a place of dependency. A place you visit on your own terms. That shift in relationship is what growing your own food is really about. Green beans, pole beans climbing a trellis, or bush beans growing in tight, productive rows are also a March consideration in a different way. You will not plant them until the soil warms, but you will prepare your trellis structures in March. You will amend your soil in March. You will stagger your planting schedule in March, deciding to sow every 2 weeks through June to ensure a continuous harvest rather than one massive glut that overwhelms you. Planning is planting. March is the planning month. The sixth plant is zucchini. And I say this with complete seriousness and without a trace of irony. Zucchini is one of the most undervalued food security crops you can grow. I know. Every gardener has heard the jokes. Leave your car unlocked in August, and someone will fill it with zucchini from their garden. The stories of harvests so abundant that people start leaving them anonymously on neighbors' doorsteps. But strip away the cultural humor for a moment and look at what is actually happening with a zucchini plant. You are looking at a plant that, once established, produces edible food nearly every day for 3 to 4 months. In warm weather, a zucchini can grow from a finger length to a foot long in 48 hours. It is one of the most productive plants per square foot in the entire garden. Start zucchini seeds indoors in March 2 to 3 weeks before your last frost date.
Basil
and you
and
will
tomatoes,
be harvesting in June,
companions in the
weeks
garden
ahead of
and
someone
on the
who
plate.
direct sowed in May. Those extra weeks matter, not just for the volume of food, but for the ripple effect through your kitchen. Zucchini bread baked and frozen. Zucchini sliced and dehydrated for soups. Shredded zucchini packed into freezer bags for winter muffins and fritters. Grilled, roasted, stuffed, sautéed. It feeds you in summer, and it feeds you in winter, if you think about it correctly. The same logic applies to its cousins butternut squash, acorn squash, delicata squash. Winter squash, started in March, will produce hard-shelled fruit that, stored properly in a cool, dry indoor space, will last until March of the following year. Again, that word, year. You grow something in summer, and you eat it the following spring. That is a larder. That is a pantry that works for you. That is independence, measured in orange flesh and hard green skin, stacked in your basement, purchased with nothing but time and attention, and a small packet of seeds. Plant number 7 is the cucumber, and the cucumber is the pickling plant. When people think about preserving food,
The
they often
easiest
think first
preservation
about canning
project you
tomatoes
will
or
ever
making
do.
jam. Both are excellent. But pickles, brined, fermented, vinegar preserved, represent one of the oldest and most elegant preservation systems in human history. Before refrigeration existed, before commercial canning existed, before any of the modern food preservation technology we take for granted, people were submerging vegetables in salt and acid to make them last through seasons when nothing grew. Pickled cucumbers, sauerkraut from fermented cabbage, kimchi from fermented vegetables of every kind. These are not quirky health food trends. They are survival technologies with thousands of years of proven reliability behind them. Cucumbers started indoors. In March, will be ready for outdoor transplant when the soil warms in May. They need warmth to thrive. They are not cold season plants, but a head start indoors means an earlier harvest, which means more pickling cucumbers, which means more jars on your shelf. A pickling cucumber variety Calypso, National Pickling, Boston Pickling is what you want. Thin-skinned, blocky, productive. Give them a trellis to climb, and they will produce far more fruit than they would sprawling on the ground. And the fruit will be cleaner, straighter, and easier to pick. Here is a thought I want to leave with you about pickling. A jar of pickles you made yourself requires nothing more than cucumbers, water, vinegar, salt, garlic, and dill. The salt and vinegar are shelf-stable pantry staples that cost almost nothing. The garlic and dill, if you grow them, and we will talk about herbs, shortly cost you nothing at all. The jar seals, goes on the shelf, and sits there for a year or more, perfectly preserved, perfectly safe, completely yours. Every jar
Cure
like
for
that
2 weeks
is a
before
small
storage.
withdrawal from dependency,
This step
a
matters.
small deposit into your own reserves. Now we arrive at plant number 8. And this one I want to take some time with, because it changes the flavor profile of everything
the
else in
roasted
your
potatoes,
garden and in your
Oh,
menu.
this soup warms the
We are
soul
talking
on a
about
January
herbs,
night.
and specifically
We certainly
a
made
combination
good use of the
basil,
harvest.
parsley, and dill that I consider non-negotiable in any food security garden. Herbs seem small, inconsequential. Most people think of them as finishing touches, a sprig of parsley on a plate, a few basil leaves torn over a bowl of pasta. But the person who grows and preserves their own herbs understands something different. Herbs are the difference between food that sustains you and food that you actually want to eat. When you are eating from your storage beans, rice, preserved tomatoes, dried squash, potatoes, the seasoning transforms everything. Food is not just calories. It is also morale. It is also comfort. And dried herbs that you grew and preserved yourself carry a richness that store-bought dried herbs cannot match. Basil started indoors. In March is basil that is ready to plant outside in May and producing abundantly in June and July. That basil becomes pesto blended with garlic, olive oil, and pine nuts or walnuts, then frozen in ice cube trays, and those pesto cubes go into your freezer and come out all winter, one
Save
or two
seed
at a time,
from your best
transforming
plants.
a simple
Never
pasta
buy again.
or a bowl of soup into something that feels like summer. That is food as memory. That is preservation as an act of care. Parsley is a biennial that grows slowly from seed and benefits enormously from being started in March. It is rich in vitamin C, vitamin K, and iron. It dries beautifully. A jar of dried parsley on your shelf represents dozens of uses in soups, stews, sauces, roasted vegetables, eggs. And once parsley is established in your garden, it largely takes care of itself, asking very little while giving a great deal. Dill, as I mentioned earlier, is essential for pickling, but it is also a beautiful standalone herb for fish, for salads, for fermented vegetables of all kinds. Start it in March. Let it grow. Harvest it heavily before it flowers. Dry it. Store it. Then let some go to seed. Collect the seed heads, and you have dill seed for next year and for cooking. A plant that feeds you this year and plants itself next year. That is the beauty of perennial thinking, applied even to annual crops. And now we arrive at the 9th plant. The one I told you at the beginning of this video to stay for. The one most people overlook. The one that operates quietly in the background of the food security group and does things that almost no other plant can do. That plant is garlic. Now, many of you may know that garlic is typically planted in the fall in October or November to overwinter in the ground and be harvested the following summer. And that is true. That is the ideal window. But here is what most people do not know. In March, you can still plant garlic specifically if you are in a climate where the ground has just thawed, or if you missed the fall window, or if you are doing it for the first time and simply did not know. Spring-planted garlic will not produce heads as large as fall-planted garlic, but it will produce. And more importantly, this is crucial, March is when you harvest your garlic scapes from fall-planted garlic, when you start preparing your garlic storage strategy for the summer harvest, and when you begin thinking about the garlic that will be ready to pull from the ground in July. But beyond the timing mechanics, I want to talk about what garlic actually means in a food security context. Garlic is medicine as much as it is food. Its antifungal, antibacterial, and antiviral properties have been documented across thousands of years of human use and confirmed repeatedly by modern research. Allicin, the compound released when garlic is crushed, is one of nature's most potent natural antimicrobials. Cultures all over the world have used garlic not just to flavor their food, but to keep themselves well through winters, through plague years, through times when access to pharmaceutical medicine was either unavailable or unaffordable. Garlic stores for 9 to 12 months when properly cured and hung in a cool, dry, ventilated space. A single clove planted produces an entire head, potentially 12 or more cloves. Plant 12 cloves and harvest 12 heads. Plant 50 cloves and harvest 50 heads. The math scales quickly. A family serious about food self-sufficiency can grow their entire year's supply of garlic in a garden bed roughly the size of a dining room table. What they would spend at the grocery store on garlic over 12 months, small though that cost may seem individually, becomes zero. And that zero matters, not just financially, but psychologically. Because every zero is a small piece of independence reclaimed. Now I want to step back from the individual plants for a moment because I think it is important to understand how these 9 things work together as a system. Because that is what they are. Not a list. A system. Think of it as layers. The cool season greens, spinach, kale, chard produce in early spring and again in fall, filling the hungry gap when almost nothing else is ready. The tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and zucchini produce throughout summer, generating the raw material for preservation, the jars, the frozen bags, the dried powders that will carry you through winter.
Harvest
The potatoes
when
and
half
beans
the
provide
leaves have
caloric
turned
density
brown.
and long-term storage, the foundation of a real pantry, not just a collection of flavors. The herbs weave through all of it, connecting the fresh and the preserved, making both edible and pleasurable and comforting. And the garlic anchors the whole thing with its storage value, its medicinal properties, and its near miraculous ability to improve everything it touches. This is not a hobby garden. This is an intentional system designed around human needs, nutritional needs, caloric needs, preservation needs, seasonal needs. Every plant earns its place. Every plant serves a purpose beyond the plate it appears on in summer. And here is something I want you to sit with for a moment. The people who built systems like this historically were not people with specialized knowledge or unusual resources. They were people who paid attention, who respected the timing, who understood that the effort they put in during the short, specific windows of opportunity, March,
Know which
being
method for
perhaps
which
the most
food.
important of all,
Safety
would
first.
determine how they ate for the rest of the year. They were patient. They were consistent. They showed up when the calendar said to show up. And they were fed. There is a conversation happening in homes
Fermentation
right now,
requires
maybe
no
even in
special
yours,
equipment,
about what
just
it would
salt
mean to be
and
more
time.
self-sufficient, about what it would feel like to not depend entirely on systems outside your control for the food that keeps you alive, about what your grandparents knew that somehow got lost between their generation and yours. That conversation does not have to stay theoretical. It can become a garden. It can become seeds in small pots under a grow light in your spare room. It can become a packet
Plant
of
them
spinach
right and they
pressed
help
into cold
each
March
other.
soil on a Saturday morning. It can become the first jar of tomatoes you ever sealed yourself,
Your
sitting on a
scraps
shelf in
become
your
your
basement,
soil
red
amendment.
and alive,
Nothing
and
is
entirely
wasted.
the result of your own effort. These things are available to you right now, not next year. Not when you have more space, or more money, or more time. Right now, in March, in this specific window that will close, as it always does, regardless of whether you were ready. The question is not whether you are capable. You are. Every person watching this is capable of planting a seed and watching it grow and eating the result. The question is whether you are willing to begin before you feel ready. Because the truth is, readiness is not a feeling that arrives before action. Readiness is a feeling that arrives because of action. You do not feel ready and then plant. You plant and then you feel ready. Start with 1 tomato. 1. A small pot of soil on a sunny windowsill. A single seed pressed 1 centimeter deep. Water it gently. Watch it. In 5 to 10 days, something will happen that is genuinely remarkable no matter how many times you have seen it. A stem will emerge. 2 small leaves will unfold. A plant will exist that did not exist before because you put it there. Because you showed up in March and made a decision. That moment, small as it is the beginning of something much larger than a tomato. It is the beginning of a different relationship with your food, with your land, with your own capacity to provide. And once you begin, you will wonder why you waited as long as you did. Before I close today, I want to leave you with a thought that I return to often. There is a difference between watching the world change and responding to it with anxiety, and watching the world change and responding to it with action. The garden is action. The seed is action. The jar on the shelf is action. None of these things require you to have all the answers. None of them require you to solve the larger problems of food systems or supply chains or economic uncertainty. They only require you to do what you can do in the space you have with the time you have, starting now. The 9 plants we talked about today: tomatoes, peppers, spinach, and cool season greens, potatoes, beans, zucchini and winter
A hoop
squash,
house costs
cucumbers,
less than
herbs,
1 week of
and garlic
groceries.
are not exotic or complicated. They have been grown by ordinary people in ordinary soil for centuries. They ask only that you start them at the right time, that you give them what they need, that you are present for the work, and they will give back to you faithfully and abundantly in ways that a grocery store receipt never will. If this video gave you something, an idea, a spark, a plan, please share it with someone who would benefit from it. Your neighbor who has been thinking about starting a garden. Your friend who has been worried about food prices. Your family member who has been asking about growing their own food but does not know where to start. That share costs you nothing and may genuinely change the direction of someone's year. Subscribe to this channel if you are not already. There is more to come on every one of these plants. Deep dives on preservation methods, soil
This
preparation,
batch of tomatoes looks
companion planting,
perfect for canning.
seed saving,
We'll have
cold
enough to
storage,
last the winter.
everything that builds the
Don't
complete
forget to
picture
label the
of
jars
a genuinely
clearly.
self-sufficient food system. What we covered today is the foundation, but the house takes time to build, and we will build it together, one video at a time. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you are in your growing journey. Are you a beginner holding a seed packet and wondering where to start? Are you a seasoned gardener who has been doing this for years and wants to share what you know? Is there a specific plant you want me to go deeper? A preservation method? A variety recommendation for your specific climate? The comment section is a real conversation, and I read everyone. The window is open. March is here. The seeds are waiting. The only question is what you are going to do about it. Thank you for being here. Now go plant something.